This is the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson. We're Luke and Susie, and this is the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
As adults, Suze, we've all been sleep-deprived, grumpy teens at some point. Where someone's asked us a question, we've had nothing more than a grunt because for whatever reason we've been burning the midnight oil. These days, it's quite different from when we were younger because I hear that a lot of teens are not going to sleep because they're Facebooking and tweeting and the devices are controlling bedtime time. But whatever is the reason for the sleep not being there, this is not just about a grumpy, grunting teen the next morning. In fact, the consequences could be significantly greater than that. To talk us through from happyfamilies.com.au, his name is Dr. Justin Coulson. Hello, how are you?
G'day, guys.
Let's talk about these grumpy teens. We've been there, each of us, but now we're parenting. We're worried about the consequences a little bit more. The stats are showing that we're not just talking about a grunt and a difficult teen to deal with. We're talking about crime levels, Justin?
This is a really curious study that's just come out in the last couple of weeks, really. February 23, 2017. And what their researchers have discovered is that if you have a teenager who is always tired, they're 4.5 times more likely to commit crimes as adults.
As adults?
As adults.
Oh.
Yeah, so this was a longitudinal study. The researchers collected the data over 30 or 40 years. So we're talking about a very long study. All of this research was collected about data as to how drowsy teens were, what kind of backgrounds they were coming from and all that sort of thing. And then the researchers, after testing 101 15-year-old boys, and we're looking at teenage boys in the north of England, went back through and found the records, the crime records from the Central Criminal Records Office, and had a look at which of those original 101 kids had a criminal record at age 29. And what they did was just looked at violent crimes and property offences. They weren't looking at the little things, just the things that were worthy of significant convictions. They found that 17% of participants had actually committed a crime by the age of 29 in adulthood. And they found that there were a couple of things that predicted it. Socioeconomic status, I'm sorry I hate saying it, but people who come from impoverished backgrounds, the lower the socioeconomic status, the greater the risk factor. That doesn't mean that people who are not wealthy are going to be criminals, not by any stretch. What it says is it's a risk factor because, unfortunately, people from those poorer backgrounds struggle at school. They struggle with often self-control. They often don't have the same opportunities. Yeah. There's a whole lot of structural stuff around that. We don't need to go into that, but it's definitely a risk factor. They also found that early social adversity was another predictor of crime, but one of the big predictors was daytime drowsiness. And what they're basically saying is if your kids are really, really tired when they're at school, they're daytime drowsy, they end up being inattentive. Their brains tend not to function as well. They tend to exercise less self-control. And 14 years later, they're actually more likely to be involved in serious crime. Wow.
And is that because, I mean, and maybe there's other outcomes from this, but is it because of their learning in the formative years to be that, and therefore as adults that's what they tend to be? What's the cause? How does drowsiness during the daytime connect with adult crime?
Well, I think what we're actually looking at here, if we were to link a chain, what we're saying is daytime drowsiness is associated with poor attention.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? So it's not the drowsiness that's quote unquote causing crime. Rather, daytime drowsiness is setting off a sequence of events. If you're drowsy in the daytime, you end up being inattentive at school. Poor attention can be used as like a proxy for poor brain function. You know, you're not utilising your brain, you're not thinking things through, you're not exercising self-control. And if you've got a lack of self-control and poor brain functioning, you're at greater risk of making decisions that are dumb.
Yeah.
Or
being maybe easily led.
Or being easily led is another great example. Or just not paying attention to what's around and thinking through the consequences of what you might do. The take-home message is pretty simple. We need our kids to be well rested. Sleep may be one of the most how do I say it? It's not a luxury item.
No.
You know what you're like as an adult. When you don't get enough sleep, you wake up the next day, you need 3 Baroccas, you've got a headache all day, you're grumpy and irritable.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm roses. I'm smiling.
No,
I'm chirping.
absolutely me.
You speak to work even when you work from home. You know, you stub your toe on someone's Lego and carry on. It doesn't, when we're tired, it doesn't predict good outcomes. Yeah. Now, if you have chronic tiredness because you're up every night gaming or on social media or whatever it is that the teenagers are doing when they say they're studying, and you're getting 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep instead of the 9 or 10 that they need, 9.5-ish, then that's going to lead to much worse outcomes. Simple. Get the kids to bed at a reasonable hour, get them up at a reasonable hour so that you're in a good cycle, and you'll usually find...
What's reasonable?
Well, every family's different, so I want to be careful with what I say, Luke.
Well, let's get a more detailed description to that answer shortly. It's the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson talking about the potential consequences of teens not getting enough sleep. More shortly.
Family life is pretty tough going sometimes. Most days are a struggle between strong-willed children and frazzled parents. And while no parent wakes up in the morning saying, "Today's the day I'm going to ruin everyone's lives," it sometimes feels like that by the end of the day. 21 Days to a Happier Family is the #1 parenting book by Dr. Justin Coulson for parents who want their kids to be better, themselves to be calmer, and their family to be happier. Now the book is also available as an online video course. In the program you'll find specific strategies to help you be at your best, evidence-based ideas to strengthen your relationship with your children, research-proven practices to improve understanding between you and your child, discipline strategies that work because they're about discipline and not punishment, and more tips to make your family happier. And as a special offer only for podcast listeners, use the code PODCAST at checkout for a massive $50 saving. 21 Days to a Happier Family, the online video course by Dr. Justin Coulson. Get it now from happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families podcast with Dr. Justin Coulson talking about some recent research that showed the potential outcomes of what happens when our teens do not get enough sleep. It could lead to criminal activity in their adult life, Dr. Justin, but what is a reasonable amount of sleep?
I try to get my kids to be in bed, the older ones, late teens, by about 9:30 or 10. And the younger ones by about 9, 8:30 or 9. Some people think that's crazy, but let me tell you, I get them up at around about 5:30 or 6. And some people say, how do you get your teenagers out of bed at 5:30 or 6? Well, that's easy. I put them to bed at about 9 o'clock. How do you do that? Easy. I get them up at 5:30.
It is a cycle.
Yeah.
We've actually, pre-teens are going to be interested to see how Tyson, who's 7, gets to that point, because he just naturally gets up at,
Yeah.
4, 5.
That'll change though. See, here's what happens. This is something that people don't understand a lot about teenagers. We have this hormone in our body called melatonin. Melatonin is the sleepy hormone. If you can't get to sleep, often a GP will prescribe some melatonin to you so that your body produces a little bit more melatonin and you feel drowsy and you're not off. That's what we need. We need melatonin. In adults and in children, we start producing that melatonin around about the time the sun goes down. In adolescence, they seem to produce it approximately 2 hours later. So, when it's 8:30 and you're saying to the kids, would you just go to sleep? I can't keep my eyes open because, once you get past about 35, 8:30 is a late night. It's been a big night if you're still going at 9:30.
Rocking it hard.
That's it. And so the teenagers, we're saying that to them at 8:30 because we're exhausted, but the melatonin production is barely kicking in for them. They've got another good couple of hours to go.
Yeah.
Now, you combine that with the excitatory stimulation of a screen and all the bings and buzzes and pops and whistles and the messages and the notifications and the game and whatever else, and their brain is on high alert. Their body's already not producing enough melatonin anyway, and they're like, I got hours in me yet. I'm not going to sleep yet. So we need to actually be cognizant of that, but encourage them, dim the lights, get the screens off, get them to bed early.
So if I'm picking up what you're putting down, you're saying drug your teens with melatonin. Is that the takeaway message?
I'm not that kind of doctor. No.
I'm just wondering what kind of screens your kids are looking at that have bings, pops and whistles. But it's good to know and good to be aware of if you're in the middle of the teenage years, to know there's something you can do. If you're approaching them, to start preparing and thinking about how the family lifestyle will work to ensure that teens can get enough sleep.
And when you fight with them over bedtime, you can just say, look, I'm saving you from a life of crime. Get to sleep now.
You're 4.5 times more likely to not commit crime if you go to sleep right now.
That's right, because if there's something teens connect with, it's facts.
Yeah. And decisions that impact the future.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Dr. Justin Coulson, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Love it.
And if you want some more information, any and all of Justin's resources are available. Books, podcasts, programs at happyfamilies.com.au. Or if you want to find out how you can have Justin come and speak at your school or organisation about this or any number of topics relating to the well-being of your whole family, go to justincoulson.com.